And before we dive deeper into these teachings, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Wisdom like this is easy to miss in the noise of life, but if this video found you, it was meant to. Now let's keep going. We carry so much, don't we? Think about your day. The anxieties about what might go wrong, the regrets from yesterday, the desperate need for things to be different than they are. It's a heavy load, this constant striving for a reality that doesn't quite fit. We love our routines, our comforts, our identities. We build our lives around them, like meticulously constructed sandcastles on a shore constantly being kissed by the tide. And then the tide comes. It always does. A relationship shifts, a job ends, a health concern arises, or simply the passage of time subtly alters the landscape of our lives. We feel a pang, a resistance. We want to hold on, to preserve that image, that feeling, that person, that state of being, as if we could somehow freeze the ever-flowing river of existence. This is the first layer of our suffering, the deep, ingrained habit of clinging. We cling to moments when they are good, trying to preserve them, and we cling to the idea of them when they are gone, wishing for their return. This clinging isn't just a mild inconvenience, it's the very engine of our distress. Imagine holding a hot coal. You know it's burning you, but you can't bear to drop it. You cradle it, wince, and yet you continue to hold it. That's how we often treat our attachments, our need for things to be permanent. It burns us, yet we refuse to let go. The Buddha saw this clearly thousands of years ago. He saw that the root of suffering wasn't external circumstances, but our internal resistance to the true nature of reality. He didn't teach a path to avoid problems, but a path to dissolve the suffering caused by our reaction to them. And the first step is recognizing the weight of what we habitually grasp. Consider the things you worry about most. Is it not the fear of losing them? The fear of change altering something dear to you? This fear is born from clinging. If we didn't cling to the idea of permanence, the idea of loss would lose its sting. We would still feel sadness, perhaps, but not the desperate anguish of something irreplaceable being snatched away. Perhaps you've seen people who seem remarkably at peace, even when faced with significant loss. They weep, yes, for they are human, but there's a core of stillness, a lack of desperate grasping. This isn't because they don't love, it's because they understand that love is not ownership. True love, in its deepest sense, is the freedom to witness and appreciate without the need to control or possess. This idea might feel counterintuitive. Doesn't love mean commitment? Doesn't commitment mean holding on? What we often mistake for love is actually a deep-seated fear of aloneness, a desire for security projected onto another person or a situation. It's a beautiful form of self-deception, a way to make ourselves feel safe in a world that is inherently fluid. The Zen parable often speaks of a monk who, on his deathbed, was asked what he had learned from his years of practice. He said, to hold nothing back. He meant this in every sense. Not just possessions, but opinions, fears, grudges, and yes, even life itself. To hold nothing back is to be utterly present, completely open, and finally free from the exhausting effort of trying to control what is uncontrollable. This isn't about becoming a passive observer of life, but about actively engaging with it from a place of grounded awareness. It means understanding that the joy of life comes not from preserving what is, but from fully experiencing the unfolding present, whatever it may bring. It's a challenging thought, this notion of holding nothing back, especially when our instincts scream for safety and security through possession. But this is precisely where the path to lasting peace begins, by understanding the profound, pervasive weight of clinging and recognizing that true freedom lies not in keeping, but in releasing. The weight we carry is not the world itself, but our insistence that it should not change, and in this insistent demand for stillness, we find ourselves perpetually disturbed, forever chasing a shadow of permanence that eludes our grasp. If the weight of clinging is the first burden we carry, then how do we find relief when our minds constantly grasp for an imagined future or a manufactured past? In the next section, we will explore when the mind demands forever, and the impossibility of ever truly achieving such a state. The human mind has a peculiar fascination with eternity. We build monuments, write stories, and invent concepts that stretch far beyond our mortal span, all in an attempt to touch something that lasts. We yearn for forever in our relationships, hoping that the love we feel today will be as strong, as vibrant, and as present 100 years from now. We crave forever in our successes, wanting the acclaim and satisfaction to remain a constant glow. We even cling to the idea of a static self, a core identity that remains unchanged through all the seasons of life. But the mind, left to its own devices, is a relentless architect of unreality. It conjures images of an unchanging future or an unalterable past, and then chastises us for the inevitable discrepancies. Why aren't things the way they used to be? It laments, or why can't this feeling last? This mental demand for forever is a subtle, yet powerful form of resistance. It's the quiet refusal to acknowledge the fundamental truth of existence, that everything is in flux. Think of your happiest memory. Is it truly frozen in time, or is it an echo, a beautiful recollection viewed through the lens of the present? The feeling might be vivid, but the moment itself is gone, existing now only as a thought, a memory, a narrative. We try to recapture that exact feeling, that exact circumstances, and when we inevitably fail, we experience disappointment, a subtle ache that speaks volumes about our unmet demand for permanence. This is not a condemnation of the past or a denigration of joy. It's an observation of how our minds operate. They find comfort in the illusion of stability, and so they erect these mental fortresses against the natural flow of change. We become like a sailor desperately trying to anchor their ship in the middle of a mighty ocean current. Every attempt to stop the movement only leads to more strain and exhaustion. This demand for forever fuels our anxiety. We worry about the future because we want to control it, to ensure it remains palatable and safe forever. We fret about aging, not just because of physical decline, but because it represents an undeniable end to a certain state of being. We fear loss because the idea of what we cherish ceasing to exist feels like an unbearable disruption to our carefully constructed permanence. The Buddha's teachings aren't about denying these desires or feelings. They are about deconstructing the illusion that sustains them. He didn't say, "Don't want happiness to last." He showed us why wanting happiness to last is the very thing that brings suffering. It's like asking a river to stop flowing. It's a request that goes against its very nature. Consider the imagery of a candle flame. It's a beautiful, vibrant thing, flickering and dancing. We watch it, mesmerized. But if we tried to hold onto that exact flicker, that precise shape of the flame, we would be holding onto nothing. It is constantly changing, constantly consuming and being consumed. Yet we speak of the flame as if it were a singular, enduring entity. Our minds do the same with our experiences, our relationships, and ourselves. We identify with a snapshot, a single frame, and declare, "This is me," or "This is them," or "This is how it should be forever." This prevents us from seeing the living, breathing reality of what is actually happening. The mind that demands forever is inherently dissatisfied. It lives in a perpetual state of not yet or no longer. It is never fully present because it's always comparing the present to an idealized, unchanging past or a safeguarded future. This continuous comparison is a recipe for discontent, a subtle but constant hum of unease beneath the surface of our lives. This yearning for permanence is also intricately linked to our fear of death. If we are to experience forever, then death must be vanquished. But death, like change, is an intrinsic aspect of existence. To deny one is to deny the other, and in doing so, we deny the vibrant, messy, impermanent reality of being alive. When we understand that the mind's demand for forever is an impossible quest, a futile attempt to impose stillness on motion, we begin to loosen our grip. We start to see that the beauty of life isn't in its supposed permanence, but in its dynamic unfolding. The most exquisite moments are often those we observe with open eyes, knowing they will pass, and finding a deeper appreciation precisely because of their transient nature. In this realization, we begin to understand that the true tragedy is not that things end, but that we spend so much of our lives resisting their natural conclusion in a futile attempt to make them last. This resistance to the natural order of things, this grasping for an unending present, inevitably leads us to confront the fact that impermanence is not just an external reality, but a deeply personal one. We will now explore the profound truth that all things, without exception, must eventually fall apart. It's a simple observation, isn't it? Look around you. The table you're using is made of wood, which was once a living tree. The paper this script might be printed on began as fibers, destined to break down. Even the mountains, so seemingly solid and ancient, are slowly being eroded by wind and water. This is the law of impermanence, the truth that all compounded things, all things that come into being, will also pass away. This isn't a pessimistic outlook, it's a fundamental characteristic of the universe. It's the natural rhythm of existence. Like a breath, in and out, every arising is followed by a passing. We understand this intellectually. We see it in the changing of seasons, the life cycle of a butterfly, the decay of organic matter. But when this truth applies to our lives, to the things and people we hold most dear, our intellectual assent often crumbles into emotional resistance. We build homes that we hope will last forever, only to see them age and require constant repair. We form relationships with the fervent wish that they will never end, and yet circumstances or the natural course of life often lead to separation. We strive for achievements, for recognition, for a state of perfect well-being, desiring them to be a permanent fixture in our lives. But eventually, the recognition fades, the achievement is surpassed, and well-being, like a delicate bloom, requires continuous tending. This inclination to resist the inevitable breakdown is perhaps the most potent source of our suffering. We mourn the decay of a favorite object, the fading of youthful vigor, the loss of a loved one. And while grief is a natural and necessary response, the suffering we additionally heap upon ourselves comes from our refusal to accept that this breaking down and falling apart is not an aberration, but the very essence of how things are. Imagine a beautiful, intricately woven tapestry. For a time, it is magnificent, its colors vibrant, its design awe-inspiring. But slowly, threads begin to fray, colors fade, the fabric weakens. If we try to preserve it perfectly, without any acknowledgement of its gradual decline, we will constantly be trying to patch it, to mend it, to artificially sustain it. This effort will consume us, and we will resent the natural process of decay, the very thing that signifies its history and its journey. The Buddha taught the doctrine of anicca, impermanence. It's not simply that things change, but that they are fundamentally characterized by change. They are porous, transient, and without a fixed, enduring essence. This realization is profound because it undermines our deep-seated desire for permanence, for safety, for control. When we cling to something, we are, in essence, trying to hold the river. We try to freeze a moment in time to prevent the inevitable wave of change from altering our experience. This is why a breakup can feel like the end of the world, or a job loss like a complete identity annihilation. We have so deeply identified with the temporary state that its passing feels like our own dissolution. But what if we saw the fraying threads not as a failure, but as a sign of life lived? What if the fading colors spoke of the countless sunrises and sunsets they have witnessed? What if the passing of a loved one, while immensely painful, is also seen as the natural completion of a cycle, a transition that allows for new forms of life and connection to arise? This perspective shift is not easy. It requires a deliberate effort to retrain our minds, to loosen the grip of our expectations. The ancient teachings often use metaphors of nature to illustrate this point. A falling autumnal leaf is not a tragedy. It's a natural part of the tree's cycle of renewal. A wilting flower has served its purpose, having bloomed and shared its fragrance. These are not failures, they are fulfillments of purpose. When we see ourselves and our experiences through this lens, we begin to liberate ourselves from the arduous task of fighting against the tide. The teachings on Anicca invite us to be present with things as they are, to witness their arising and their passing without judgment or desperate clinging. It's an invitation to stop trying to force permanence onto a reality that is inherently fluid. This acceptance is not about resignation or apathy, it's about an honest acknowledgement of how things truly function. By accepting that all things fall apart, we free ourselves to appreciate them fully in their moment and to move with the flow of change rather than being battered against its shores. The process of falling apart is not an ending of beauty, but a transformation that we have yet to truly understand. This understanding that all things fall apart is directly linked to the struggles we face when we try to hold on to desires that, by their very nature, are impermanent. In the next section, we will explore the experience of the fire you keep touching, the nature of our enduring attachments, and the pain they inflict. There are certain sensations we instinctively avoid. A sharp pain, a burning heat, an icy chill. Our bodies are designed to recoil, to protect us from harm. But what if we, through sheer habit or a misguided belief in control, kept returning to the very source of that discomfort? What if we kept touching the fire, knowing it burns, yet unable to resist the urge to feel its heat? This is the essence of grasping, of clinging to things that inherently cause us pain because we mistake them for something else, or believe we can somehow withstand their destructive nature. This is the fire we often bring into our lives: unfulfilled desires, unmet expectations, and the relentless pursuit of temporary pleasures that leave us feeling empty once they're gone. We chase after validation, like a moth drawn to a flame, only to be singed by its fleeting intensity. We engage in arguments, fueled by pride or a need to be right, and end up scorched by harsh words and lingering resentment. We try to force outcomes, to bend reality to our will, and end up burned by the inevitable resistance of things as they are. The Buddha spoke of dukkha, often translated as suffering, but it's more nuanced than that. It encompasses dissatisfaction, unease, stress, and the fundamental unsatisfactoriness that arises from our inability to accept impermanence. This unsatisfactoriness is the burning sensation we feel when we repeatedly touch the fire of desire, of craving, of aversion. We want things to be permanent and pleasant, and when they are not, we suffer. Think about your most persistent worries or anxieties. Are they not centered around things you are desperately trying to hold on to, or things you desperately want to avoid? Perhaps it's the fear of losing a loved one, the anxiety of financial insecurity, or the dread of aging. These are all, in their own way, fires we keep touching. We might try to protect ourselves by worrying, by planning obsessively, by seeking constant reassurance, but these actions often just keep us in proximity to the burning element. The problem isn't the existence of desire itself, as desire is a natural part of being alive. The problem lies in our unhealthy attachment to it, our insistence that it must be fulfilled in a particular way, or that its fulfillment will bring lasting happiness. This is like scooping up embers from a fire and trying to keep them warm in your hands. The embers will eventually cool, and in the process, they will sting and burn. Consider the craving for sensation. We seek out delicious food, thrilling entertainment, intoxicating substances, hoping for an enduring high. But the pleasure of the taste fades, the thrill of the movie ends, the intoxication passes, leaving us with a dull ache, a craving for more. We are like someone perpetually picking at a wound, never allowing it to heal, always reopening it for a brief, misguided sense of stimulation. The teachings on the nature of suffering are a call to recognize these patterns. They invite us to observe our actions, our desires, our aversions, without immediate judgment, but with a clear eye for their consequences. When we touch the fire, we feel the burn. This is not a punishment, it's feedback. It's the universe gently, or sometimes not so gently, showing us that this path leads to discomfort. What if, instead of recoiling in pain and then reaching out again, we simply observed the burn? What if we acknowledged the heat, felt its intensity, and then, without trying to smother it or prolong its touch, chose to withdraw? This is the beginning of wisdom. It's the realization that our actions have consequences and that some actions consistently lead to suffering, not because the universe is cruel, but because they are fundamentally at odds with the nature of reality. This is why the Buddha didn't prescribe a set of rules to follow, but rather a path of understanding. He wanted us to see for ourselves the connection between our grasping and our pain. He showed us that the fire is not some external force to be battled, but often a fire we ourselves are tending or simply holding too close. The act of touching the fire is often driven by a misunderstanding of what truly nourishes us. We seek warmth and comfort, but we reach for that which will inevitably leave us scarred. This painful cycle can continue endlessly, a series of burns that we try to soothe with more grasping, only to find ourselves back at the source of the heat. The path forward is not greater efforts to endure the burning, but the radical act of ceasing to reach for the flames. Understanding the fire we keep touching is crucial, but the heat of our desires often extends to the people and things we hold most dear. In the next section, we will confront the challenging truth that nothing we love can, by its very nature, be kept forever. This is perhaps one of the most difficult truths to truly embrace. We invest our hearts, our hopes, and our very beings into people, experiences, and even objects. We create beautiful bonds, interwoven with shared memories, laughter, and deep affection. And then the heart's desperate whisper arises, "I want this to last. I want to keep this love, this person, this feeling forever." But the universe operates on a different principle. The truth is, nothing we love can be kept in a static, unchanging state. Relationships evolve. People change, grow apart, or depart from this life. Experiences, while precious, are fleeting moments that, by their very nature, pass. Even our own feelings, the very essence of our love, are subject to the tides of impermanence. This is not a call to abandon love or to become emotionally detached. Far from it. It is a call to redefine what love truly means and to understand that its deepest expression is not possession, but presence. When we try to keep what we love, we often end up suffocating it, ourselves, and the relationship along with it. We cling, we demand, we fear loss, and in this fearful holding, we diminish the very thing we cherish. Imagine a bird. If you try to capture it and keep it in a cage, you might marvel at its beauty up close for a while. But the bird will likely lose its song, its spirit. It will pace, it will despair. Its vibrant life will be dimmed by your need to possess it. True appreciation of the bird comes when we allow it to fly freely, to sing its own song, to be exactly what it is, in its own time and space. And when it lands near us, we can appreciate its presence, its beauty, without the desperate need to extend its stay or control its flight. This is the paradox of love and possession. The desire to keep something safe, to ensure its perpetual presence, often leads to its diminishment. We project our fears and insecurities onto our loved ones and our cherished circumstances, mistaking control for care and ownership for affection. We might say, "I love you so much, I can't bear to lose you," but what we often mean is, "I am so afraid of being alone, so afraid of change, that I need you to remain exactly as you are to ensure my own comfort." This fear manifests in subtle ways. It's the nagging jealousy, the constant need for reassurance, the subtle judgments about how a loved one should behave or where they should be. It's the disappointment when a relationship doesn't unfold exactly as we envisioned, or when the spark of early romance naturally gives way to a deeper, quieter companionship. We try to force the initial intensity to remain, creating a pressure that can strain even the strongest bonds. The teachings invite us to recognize that our love is not a commodity to be owned or a possession to be guarded. It is a flow of vibrant energy that can be shared and experienced. When we release the need to keep it, we make space for its true expression. This means accepting that people will change, that circumstances will shift, and that relationships, like all living things, have their own natural cycles of growth, flourishing, and sometimes a gentle passing. When we truly accept that nothing we love can be kept, a peculiar form of freedom emerges. We can love more fully, more generously, because our love is not contingent on permanence. We can celebrate the beauty of a moment, a connection, a person, precisely because we understand its transient nature. Each encounter becomes more precious, more vibrant, because we are not trying to freeze it, but to fully inhabit it. This realization is profoundly liberating because it shifts our focus from acquisition and preservation to appreciation and presence. It allows us to be truly available for the people in our lives, not as their keepers, but as their companions on the journey. We learn to offer our love as a gift, freely given, without the expectation of eternal return or unyielding permanence. The beauty you experience in this moment, the connection you feel, is not diminished by its impermanence. It is amplified by it, but this acceptance of change, this letting go of the need to possess, extends even to the most fundamental element of our existence, ourselves. In the next section, we will explore the astonishing truth that even your own self will eventually leave you. This can be a startling revelation. We identify so strongly with our sense of self, our ego, our continuous stream of consciousness. I am X, we declare, believing this, I to be a solid, unchanging core. We build our lives around this perceived permanence, this unwavering identity. But the ancient wisdom whispers a profound truth. Even this self, this anchor of our identity, is not permanent. Even you will leave you. This is the teaching of anatta, often translated as no self or non-self. It doesn't mean that we don't exist. It means that the solid, independent, unchanging self we believe ourselves to be is an illusion. It is a construct, a story we tell ourselves based on a collection of ever-changing physical and mental components. Think about yourself at different stages of your life. The toddler who stumbled and babbled, the curious teenager grappling with identity, the adult facing complex decisions, and the elderly person reflecting on a lifetime. Are you exactly the same person in each of these phases? Of course not. Your body has changed, your thoughts have evolved, your experiences have shaped you, your perspectives have shifted. Yet there's a thread that connects these disparate moments, a narrative that creates the illusion of continuity. This illusion is powerful. It's the foundation upon which we build our attachments, our judgments, our desires. I want this for myself. I am hurt because of what they did to me. This is my achievement. These are all statements rooted in the belief in a permanent, separate self. And when this perceived self is threatened, when loss or pain arises, we suffer intensely because we believe I am being diminished or destroyed. The Buddha's insight into anatta is not meant to be nihilistic, it's meant to be liberating. If the self is not a fixed entity, then the fear of its destruction through aging, illness, or death loses its absolute power. If I is not a solid, unchanging core, then the suffering caused by the perceived loss of my possessions, my reputation, or my loved ones can begin to dissolve. Consider a river. We call it the Amazon or the Nile as if it were a single entity, but the water in the river is constantly flowing, constantly changing. The water that was there a moment ago is not the same water that is here now. Yet we perceive it as one continuous river. Similarly, our self is a continuous flow of physical sensations, thoughts, emotions, perceptions, and consciousness, all arising and passing away. There is no static, unchanging I residing within it. When we grasp onto the idea of a permanent self, we create a rigid boundary between me and everything else. This boundary leads to a sense of separation, of being an isolated island in a sea of existence. It fuels comparison, I am better than them, possessiveness, this is mine, and defensiveness, you attacked me. The realization that even yourself will leave you is not a morbid prophecy, but an invitation to let go of this illusion of a solid self. It's an invitation to recognize that the deepest peace comes not from protecting a fixed identity, but from understanding the fluid, interconnected nature of all things, including ourselves. This doesn't mean we stop acting or stop caring. It means we act and care from a place of wisdom, understanding that our actions are part of a larger web of cause and effect, not the lonely endeavors of a solitary self. It means we love and care for others, not out of a need to solidify our own identity or to gain something for ourselves, but out of a recognition of our shared humanity and interconnectedness. When we begin to see the impermanence of our own self, the fear of aging and death loses its grip. We can appreciate the journey, the unfolding of life, without clinging to any particular phase or form. We can embrace the present moment, knowing that this moment, too, will pass, and that the I experiencing it will also shift and change. This understanding is the ultimate letting go, the liberation from the burden of maintaining a fictional permanence. In recognizing that the self is not a fixed possession, we open ourselves to a vast, unburdened freedom, a freedom that arises when we stop trying to hold on to something that is inherently fluid and ever-changing. This recognition of impermanence, even within our own being, leads us to question the very foundation of our actions and desires. If the self is not fixed, then what is the basis of our control? In the next section, we will investigate the pervasive illusion of control and its role in our suffering. We are a species that craves control. From the smallest child who wants to choose their own clothes to leaders of nations making sweeping policy decisions, the desire to steer the course of events is deeply ingrained. We believe that if we can just get things right, if we can plan meticulously, anticipate every variable, and execute perfectly, we can engineer a life free from unwanted outcomes. We can control our happiness, our success, our security, and even the actions of others. But examine this belief closely. Can you truly control the weather? Can you dictate the thoughts and feelings of another person? Can you guarantee that your health will remain perfect or that your finances will never falter? While we can influence and prepare, the ultimate control over external events, and indeed, over the internal landscape of others, is an illusion. This illusion of control is a significant driver of suffering. When we believe we should be in control, and then reality inevitably demonstrates otherwise, we experience frustration, anxiety, anger, and despair. We blame ourselves for not being smart enough, diligent enough, or powerful enough to maintain the order we demand. We blame others for not complying with our perceived rightful influence. Think about a time you were stuck in traffic. You might have gripped the steering wheel tighter, fumed at the other drivers, or mentally rehearsed all the ways you could have left earlier. You were attempting to exert control over a situation that was, for all intents and purposes, beyond your immediate influence. The more you fought the reality of the traffic jam, the more agitated and miserable you became. The illusion of control kept you captive to your frustration. In relationships, this illusion often manifests as trying to change someone. If only they would see things my way, we think, or if only they would act more like X. We expend immense energy attempting to mold others into our ideal, unaware that their journey, their perspectives, and their choices are ultimately their own. This attempt at control, though often born of a misguided love or concern, usually breeds resentment and distance. Even in our own internal lives, we seek control. We try to control our thoughts, our emotions, our desires. I shouldn't be feeling this, we tell ourselves, or why can't I stop thinking about this? This internal struggle, this battle for control over our own minds, is perhaps the most exhausting and ultimately futile of all our attempts. We are like an artist trying to command a wild, untamed brush, only to find it splattering paint in directions they never intended. The Buddha's teachings on impermanence and no-self expose the very foundation of this illusion. If everything is constantly changing, including ourselves, then how can there be a fixed point of control? If there is no solid, independent I to orchestrate events, then who, precisely, is doing the controlling? When we acknowledge the illusion of control, we begin to shift our focus from trying to manage outcomes to engaging with the process. Instead of fighting the traffic, we might put on some calming music or use the time for reflection. Instead of trying to change a loved one, we can choose to accept them as they are, or to communicate our needs and feelings openly without demanding compliance. Instead of battling our own thoughts and emotions, we can learn to observe them with curiosity, to understand their impermanent nature, and to respond with wisdom rather than reaction. This shift is not about becoming passive or apathetic. It's about cultivating a deep wisdom that understands where our efforts are best placed. Our energy is most effectively directed towards cultivating our own inner qualities, our compassion, our patience, our mindfulness, rather than trying to manipulate the external world or the behavior of others. Giving up the illusion of control is not a surrender to chaos, it's a surrender to reality. It's an embrace of the flow of life with all its unpredictable twists and turns. It's recognizing that true peace is found not in the ability to dictate events, but in the capacity to meet whatever arises with equanimity and presence. In letting go of the impossible quest for total control, we actually gain a far greater power. The power to navigate life with wisdom, grace, and an unshakable inner peace that is immune to the whims of external circumstances. This liberation from the exhausting struggle for control opens the door to understanding the true nature of reality, the insights that the Buddha himself experienced. What the Buddha saw was not merely a recognition of impermanence or the illusion of self, but a profound and transformative understanding of the very fabric of existence. In the next section, we will explore what the Buddha actually saw, the core insights that form the bedrock of his timeless teachings. The story of the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, is not one of a man inventing new philosophies, but of a seeker who looked deeply, relentlessly into the heart of suffering and discovered its resolution. He saw with piercing clarity the fundamental nature of reality, and in that seeing, he found liberation. So, what exactly did the Buddha see? He saw suffering, dukkha, not as an accidental flaw in the universe, but as an inherent characteristic of conditioned existence. He saw that all beings, in one way or another, experience dissatisfaction, unease, and the pain of impermanence. This was not a morbid observation, but a starting point. He recognized that if suffering is pervasive, then its cessation must also be possible. Crucially, he saw impermanence, anicca, in everything, not just in the grand cycles of nature or the inevitable aging of the body, but in the most fleeting of thoughts, the subtlest of emotions, the very moments of consciousness. He understood that nothing, absolutely nothing, is fixed or unchanging. Everything arises, exists for a time, and passes away. This seeing is not a pessimistic condemnation of life, but an honest appraisal of its dynamic, fluid nature. He saw anatta, no self. He looked for a solid, independent, unchanging I that could be identified as the true essence of a person, and found only a constantly shifting confluence of physical and mental phenomena. There was no permanent owner, no fixed administrator of experience. This realization dismantles the illusion of a separate self, the root of so much fear, attachment, and conflict. And entwined with these three marks of existence, he saw the law of cause and effect, karma. He saw that our actions, driven by intention, create ripples that shape our present and future experiences. Every thought, every word, every deed plants a seed. There is no escaping the consequences of our volitional actions, nor is there escape from the cycles of becoming that these actions perpetuate. But the Buddha didn't stop at merely observing these truths. He saw the way out. He saw that suffering arises not from impermanence or no self itself, but from our resistance to them. We suffer because we crave permanence in an impermanent world, we cling to a non-existent self, and we act without understanding the consequences. His enlightenment, his awakening, was the direct realization of the Four Noble Truths. 1. The truth of suffering. 2. The truth of the origin of suffering. craving, attachment, aversion. 3. The truth of the cessation of suffering, nirvana, the extinguishing of craving. 4. The truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering, the Noble Eightfold Path. What the Buddha saw was a universe that, at its core, is not inherently punitive or cruel, but simply operates according to its own laws. Our suffering is not a punishment for our failings, but a natural consequence of living in ignorance of these laws. His vision was one of profound clarity, revealing that the problems we experience are not imposed upon us by an external force, but are generated by our own misperceptions and our own actions. His awakening was the seeing of a way beyond this cycle of suffering. He saw that by understanding and embracing the nature of reality, impermanence, no self, and the law of cause and effect, and by transforming our minds through the practices of the Noble Eightfold Path, right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, we could gradually dismantle the very roots of our dissatisfaction. He saw that the universe isn't a place where we are meant to constantly struggle against an inherent unfairness, but a place where, by understanding its true nature, we can find profound peace and liberation. His vision was one of immense compassion, born not from sentimentality, but from an undeniable seeing of suffering and a clear understanding of its antidote. What the Buddha saw was not a destination, but a way of seeing. It was the unveiling of a path that leads from the mire of suffering to the clear, unburdened space of enlightenment. This vision is not reserved for him alone. It is accessible to all who are willing to look with the same depth and sincerity. This deep seeing is what allows us to move beyond the simple avoidance of pain towards a proactive embrace of wisdom and compassion, a path that truly unpacks the meaning of detachment. The Buddha's profound insights reveal that true freedom lies not in accumulation, but in release. When we understand detachment not as indifference, but as a wise and skillful way of relating to the world, we begin to unlock a deeper sense of peace. In the next section, we will explore how detachment is not indifference, but rather a profound engagement with life from a place of wisdom. There is a common misconception about detachment, particularly in Western cultures. It's often mistaken for a cold, aloof indifference. We might imagine a detached person as someone who doesn't care, who observes life from a safe, emotionless distance, unmoved by joy or sorrow, love or pain. This misunderstanding can be a significant barrier to embracing the teachings, as it suggests a loss of connection, a hardening of the heart. But this is not what the Buddhist teachings on detachment mean at all. True detachment, vairagya in Sanskrit, is not about lacking feeling, it's about understanding the nature of feeling and clinging. It is the wisdom of not being enslaved by our desires, our aversions, our attachments, or our expectations. It is the ability to engage with life fully, with all its ups and downs, without being consumed by them. Think of a skilled surfer. The surfer is not indifferent to the ocean. They are intimately connected with its power, its rhythm, its currents. They feel the water, they understand its movements, and they skillfully ride the waves. But they do not cling to the wave. They know that the wave will crest and break, and they are ready to transition to the next. If they try to hold onto a wave indefinitely, they will be wiped out. Their skill lies in their ability to engage deeply with the wave, while simultaneously recognizing its impermanence and their own transient relationship with it. This is the essence of detachment. It is a profound engagement with life, but an engagement that is free from the desperate need to possess, to control, or to make things last forever. It is an engagement rooted in wisdom, in the understanding that all things are impermanent and that clinging to them leads to suffering. When we are attached, we become brittle. A slight disruption, a change in circumstances, a loss, and we can shatter. Our happiness becomes entirely dependent on external factors remaining just as we want them. When those factors shift, our world crumbles. This is not living. This is being a prisoner of our own attachments. Detachment, on the other hand, allows for resilience. It means we can love deeply, work passionately, and experience joy intensely, but we do so with an underlying understanding that these experiences are transient. This understanding doesn't diminish the richness of the experience, it often enhances it, making each moment more precious precisely because it is not expected to last. Consider a parent who loves their child fiercely. Indifference would be not expressing that love, not nurturing the child. Detachment, in this context, would be raising the child with all the love and care possible, celebrating their growth, but understanding that one day the child will grow up, become independent, and live their own life. The parent does not cling to the infantile version of the child, nor do they demand that the child remain dependent forever. They love the child for who they are in each stage of their development, allowing them their own unfolding. The Buddha himself, after his awakening, continued to engage with the world. He taught, he offered counsel, he interacted with people from all walks of life. He was not a recluse detached from humanity. He was deeply compassionate, but his compassion was free from the grasping that leads to suffering. His engagement was an expression of his wisdom, not a desperate attempt to control or possess. So the freedom that detachment offers is not the freedom to escape life, but the freedom to live it more fully, more wisely, and more compassionately. It is the freedom to experience the full spectrum of human emotion without being controlled by it. It is the freedom to form meaningful connections without the burden of possession. It is the freedom to offer your best to the world without the anxious need for it to remain unchanged or to fulfill your every expectation. Detached action comes from a place of wisdom and compassion, knowing that our efforts are valuable not because they guarantee a specific outcome, but because they are a skillful and ethical way of engaging with the world, regardless of what the future may bring. This understanding of detachment as active, compassionate wisdom is the gateway to truly appreciating the present moment as it is fully, without the need to keep it. This clear understanding of detachment allows us to see that true connection is found not in holding on, but in being present. In the next section, we will explore how presence doesn't possess, but rather embraces the unfolding of life with an open heart. We often confuse presence with possession. We believe that if we are present in a relationship, we somehow have a claim over it, a right to its continuity and its exact form. We think being present means being a constant, unyielding fixture, a guarantee that nothing will change. But true presence, in the Buddhist sense, is not about ownership. It's about a deep, unreserved engagement with what is, without the need to control or to keep it. Imagine standing by a river. You can be present by the river, feeling its coolness, observing its flow, listening to its murmur. You are fully there, experiencing it. But you do not command the river to stop, nor do you try to bottle up its water and take it with you, demanding that it remain perpetually within your grasp. Your presence is an appreciation, an immersion, a respectful witnessing. This is what it means to be present without possessing. It means to be fully here, in this moment, with whoever or whatever is before you, without the underlying anxiety of needing them to stay or to be a particular way. It's a radical act of trust in the unfolding of life and in the authenticity of the connection itself. When we try to possess, we inevitably stifle. We smother with demands for attention, with the need for constant reassurance, with the unspoken expectation that our loved ones or our circumstances will remain static, molded to our desires. This is not presence. It is a form of control masquerading as connection. It breeds resentment, stifles growth, and ultimately pushes away the very things we are trying to hold onto. True presence, on the other hand, creates space. It allows beings to be themselves, to evolve, to express their own unique nature. It is a spaciousness that says, I am here with you, fully experiencing this moment. I appreciate your being, your unfolding, and I am not afraid of what the next moment may bring. This is the foundation of genuine love and connection. It is a giving of oneself in awareness, not a demanding of something for oneself. The mind that seeks to possess is a mind that is fearful. It fears loss, it fears change, it fears loneliness. This fear drives it to grasp, to cling, to try and manufacture permanence where none exists. But the mind that is truly present is a mind that has begun to see through these fears. It understands that the essence of connection is not in holding, but in sharing, not in ownership, but in mutual experiencing. This understanding allows us to be more authentic in our relationships. We can be more honest about our own needs, but without demanding that others fulfill them in a predetermined way. We can celebrate the unique qualities of another person, their individuality, their journey, without trying to superimpose our own narrative upon them. We can be present for their joys and their sorrows, not to possess their happiness or to fix their pain, but to simply offer our unwavering, accepting presence. The practice of mindfulness is the fertile ground from which this non-possessive presence grows. By training ourselves to be aware of the present moment, without judgment or distraction, we begin to untangle the habitual patterns of grasping. We start to notice when we are trying to control, when we are projecting our fears, when we are attempting to possess. And with that awareness, we can make a different choice, the choice to simply be present, fully and openly, with what is unfolding. This type of presence is incredibly powerful. It is not demanding, yet it fosters deep connection. It is not possessive, yet it offers a profound sense of security and acceptance. It is the gentle acknowledgement of existence as it is, with all its beauty and all its change, and the willing embrace of that reality, moment by moment. The freedom found in this kind of presence is the freedom to truly see and appreciate the unfolding beauty of life. This embrace of the present, with its inherent changes, leads to a deeper understanding of acceptance, which is not a passive resignation, but a powerful affirmation of life. In the next section, we will explore how acceptance is not defeat, but a profound and liberating act of courage. The word acceptance can sometimes carry the weight of resignation. We might associate it with giving up, with admitting defeat, with passively tolerating things we deep down wish were different. This is a common misunderstanding that can prevent us from embracing one of the most transformative practices on the spiritual path. True acceptance, as understood in Buddhist wisdom, is not about defeat. It is not about liking or condoning something we find harmful or painful. It is not about giving up on the possibility of change or improvement. Instead, acceptance is a profound and courageous recognition of reality as it is in this very moment. It is the act of acknowledging what is true without resistance. Think of a person who is very ill. They might be angry, frustrated, and fight against their condition with all their might. This fight, this resistance, can be exhausting and can compound their suffering. Acceptance in this case would not be saying, "I want to be sick," or "this is the best it can get." It would be acknowledging, "This is my current reality. I am experiencing illness." From this place of clear observation, the person is then free to make the most skillful choices about their care, their peace of mind, and their remaining time. Acceptance is not about liking the present moment, but about not fighting it. When we fight against what is, we are expending tremendous energy in a futile battle. We are arguing with reality. This struggle creates tension, anxiety, and a deep sense of dissatisfaction. Acceptance, conversely, releases this energy. It frees us to see clearly and to act wisely from a place of groundedness, rather than from a place of desperate resistance. Imagine a strong current in a river. If you try to swim directly against it, you will exhaust yourself. You will make very little progress, and you will likely be swept further downstream than if you had let go and used the current to your advantage or navigated it with skill. Acceptance is like recognizing the power of the current and understanding how to work with it rather than against it. This is why acceptance is not defeat. It is the opposite of defeat. It is the ultimate victory over the internal battles that drain our energy and cloud our judgment. It is the first step towards genuine healing, growth, and transformation. When we accept our present reality, we are no longer bound by the illusion that things should be different. This opens up possibilities that were previously obscured by our resistance. For example, if you are struggling with a difficult habit and you refuse to accept that the habit exists or that you are currently caught in its grip, you will likely continue to engage in self-recrimination and ineffective attempts to stop. Acceptance would be acknowledging, I am currently struggling with this habit. It is a pattern I wish to change. From this honest place, you can then explore the root causes, develop strategies, and cultivate the support needed to make a lasting change. Acceptance requires courage. It asks us to face unpleasant truths, to let go of cherished illusions, and to be present with discomfort. It calls for a deep trust in our own capacity to navigate life, whatever its circumstances may be. It is an active engagement with reality, not a passive surrender. By accepting what is, we stop wasting energy fighting shadows. We can then channel our energy into constructive action towards what we can influence and towards cultivating inner peace regardless of external conditions. It is the foundation upon which skillful action, genuine compassion, and lasting contentment are built. The courage to accept the present moment in all its complexity is not a sign of weakness, but a testament to our inner strength and our capacity for profound peace. This strength leads us to embrace the inevitable experiences of life, not as something to endure, but as something to learn from and move through with grace. This movement through life's inevitable experiences, especially those of loss, can be navigated with a profound sense of peace. In the next section, we will explore the possibility of loss without suffering, a concept that arises directly from the practice of acceptance. The word loss often conjures images of devastation, of emptiness, of unbearable pain. We are conditioned to see loss, whether it's the passing of a loved one, the end of a relationship, or the fading of youth, as an absolute tragedy, a source of profound and lasting suffering. But what if it were possible to experience loss, a fundamental aspect of life, without being consumed by suffering? This isn't about suppressing grief or pretending that loss doesn't hurt. Grief is a natural, necessary, and healthy response to saying goodbye to something or someone we hold dear. It's a testament to the depth of our connection. However, the suffering associated with loss is often not just about the loss itself, but about the extra layer of pain we add through our resistance to it. The teachings on acceptance, impermanence, and non-attachment pave the way for this profound understanding. When we have cultivated a mind that understands that all things are transient, that nothing is truly ours to keep forever, and that clinging to what is impermanent inevitably leads to pain, then the experience of loss can be met with a different quality of awareness. Imagine your favorite possession. You cherish it, you use it, you appreciate it. If it gets broken or lost, there will be sadness, perhaps disappointment. But if you have lived with the understanding that it is just a thing, a temporary object that will eventually wear out or be misplaced, your reaction might be different than if you believed it was irreplaceable, a core part of your identity that has now been irrevocably shattered. The sting of the loss is lessened because the expectation of permanence was never there. This principle extends to relationships and life circumstances. When we have loved fully, knowing that the relationship, like all things, is subject to change, and we have practiced being present and appreciative of the connection as it is, then when that connection shifts or ends, we can grieve the loss without being utterly destroyed by it. The pain of absence is real, but the agony of believing that something essential has been stolen from us can be mitigated. The suffering arises from the story we tell ourselves about the loss. My life is over. I will never find love again. This is unbearable. These are often the narratives that amplify the pain. The path to loss without suffering involves recognizing these narratives for what they are: interpretations, not immutable truths, and choosing not to give them absolute power. This practice requires cultivating equanimity, a balanced state of mind that is not easily thrown off by pleasant or unpleasant experiences. It means not getting swept away by the initial shock and pain, but holding it with awareness, like holding a delicate flame. We acknowledge the heat, the flicker, the uncertainty, but we strive not to let it consume us. The wisdom gained through understanding anicca, impermanence, is crucial here. If we truly accept that everything changes, then the ending of a particular form, a particular relationship, or a particular phase of life is not an aberration but a natural consequence of that fundamental truth. This acceptance doesn't negate the pain of parting, but it removes the layer of shock and disbelief that often intensifies our suffering. It's also about letting go of the what-ifs and should-haves. When loss occurs, our minds often race to scenarios where things could have been different, where we could have acted differently to prevent it. This mental rehashing is a form of resistance that keeps us trapped in pain. Loss without suffering means acknowledging the past as it was, understanding that the outcome, whatever it was, has already occurred, and releasing the need to change it. Ultimately, experiencing loss without suffering is not about becoming numb. It's about becoming wise. It's about loving deeply and living fully, while simultaneously embracing the inherent transience of all things. It's about understanding that while we cannot prevent loss, we can choose how we respond to it, and that a response rooted in acceptance and wisdom can lead to a profound sense of peace, even in the face of profound change. This process of navigating loss with grace allows us to see the enduring power of mindfulness, which brings clarity to even the most turbulent moments. Even as we accept the cycles of life and loss, the practice of mindfulness grounds us in the present, revealing how each moment, by its very nature, is in constant flux. In the next section, we will explore how mindfulness shines a light on what changes and why this awareness is key to peace. Mindfulness is often described as paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally. It's a practice that brings us back to what is happening now, but what is happening now is, by its very nature, constantly changing. The breath enters and leaves, thoughts arise and pass, sensations shift, the external world transforms. Paradoxically, by focusing intently on the present moment, mindfulness illuminates the all-pervading truth of impermanence. When we practice mindfulness, we are not aiming to freeze time or to find a static point of stillness within ourselves. Instead, we are learning to observe the flow. We watch the rise and fall of the breath, not trying to control it, but simply noticing its rhythm. We observe the procession of thoughts, like clouds drifting across the sky, without getting caught up in their content or trying to push them away. We feel the sensations in our body, noticing how they arise, remain for a time, and then dissolve. This practice is like shining a gentle, steady light on the currents of change that are always at play, both within us and around us. We begin to see, with our own eyes, that the feeling of anxiety that grips us is not a permanent fixture, but a wave that will eventually recede. The joy that fills us is not an eternal state, but a bright, beautiful moment that will naturally transition. The physical discomfort that arises is not an immovable obstacle, but a sensation that will eventually alter or disappear. This illumination of change is profoundly liberating. It depotentiates those aspects of our experience that held us captive. When we were under the illusion of permanence, these changing phenomena felt like threats or stolen treasures. We clung to the good ones, desperate to keep them, and recoiled from the bad ones, desperately wanting them to disappear. But by mindfully observing their transient nature, we begin to loosen those patterns of grasping and aversion. The mind that is not mindful often lives in a state of denial or frantic effort. It denies the reality of constant change by seeking permanence, or it frantically tries to alter its circumstances to escape discomfort, often creating more problems in the process. Mindfulness, however, offers a different approach. It invites us to simply witness the change, to be present with it, and in that witnessing, to discover a deep well of peace. This doesn't mean we become passive spectators in our lives. On the contrary, by seeing clearly how things change, we are better equipped to respond skillfully. If we mindfully observe the arising of anger, we can see its impermanent nature and choose not to react explosively. If we mindfully observe the fleeting nature of motivation, we can still choose to put in the effort, knowing that the feeling will eventually shift. The light of mindfulness shines brightest on the subtle shifts that occur within us moment by moment. It helps us to understand that our sense of self, our emotions, our thoughts, are not solid, fixed entities, but processes in constant transformation. This understanding dissolves the rigid boundaries we often create around ourselves and our experiences, fostering a sense of interconnectedness and fluidity. In essence, mindfulness trains us to meet life not as a series of solid objects to be held or avoided, but as a dynamic, ever-flowing river. By observing the river's currents with awareness, we learn to navigate it with grace, rather than being tossed about by its unpredictable surges. This practice reveals that the most profound peace is not found in resisting change, but in fully embracing the ever-changing nature of reality. This embrace of change leads to a remarkable realization. There is nothing that truly needs defending, a concept we will explore next. The shedding of the need to defend something solid and enduring leads to a quiet understanding that there is truly nothing to defend, and in this realization, we find a profound sense of openness. In the next section, we will delve into the concept of having nothing to defend. We spend so much of our lives defending something. We defend our ideas, our reputations, our choices, our ego. We build up walls of justification, elaborate arguments, and carefully curated images to protect this perceived core of self that we believe is under constant threat. We are like a general perpetually on guard, protecting a fortress that, in reality, has no solid foundation. The teachings on impermanence and no-self dismantle the very idea of something concrete that needs defending. If there is no fixed, enduring self, then what exactly are we protecting? If all our achievements, our opinions, our physical forms are in constant flux, then what solid ground do we stand upon that requires such vigilant safeguarding? When we grasp onto a belief, an identity, or an idea as if it were an immutable truth, we become incredibly vulnerable. Any challenge to that belief feels like a personal attack. Any contradiction exposes the fragility of our position. This vulnerability leads to defensiveness, to a tightening of the mind, a shutting down of openness. We become rigid, brittle, and unable to learn or grow. Consider a time you've been in an argument where you felt the need to win. You likely focused intensely on defending your position, perhaps even distorting facts or disregarding the other person's perspective entirely. This isn't about seeking truth, it's about defending an idea, an identity, a constructed self. The energy expended in this defense is immense, and it rarely leads to genuine understanding or connection. The act of defending something inherently requires that thing to be perceived as valuable and fragile. But what if we began to see that value doesn't lie in permanence or in an unassailable status, but in its very nature of arising and passing? What if our opinions, our beliefs, our very identities are more like river currents than solid boulders? They are powerful in their flow, but not something to be held onto as if they were eternal. When we let go of the need to defend, a remarkable lightness enters our lives. We become more open to new perspectives, more willing to admit when we are wrong, and more able to engage in genuine dialogue. We realize that being right is less important than being understanding. We see that true strength lies not in an unyielding defense, but in the flexibility to adapt, to learn, and to let go. This doesn't mean we stop having opinions or engaging with the world. It means we engage without armoring ourselves. We can express our views with clarity and conviction, but without the desperate need for them to be universally accepted or unchallenged. We can acknowledge the impermanence of all things, including our own current understanding, and remain open to the possibility of evolving. The peace that comes from having nothing to defend is profound. It's the peace of not being constantly on edge, of not needing to be vigilant against perceived threats. It's the peace of knowing that our worth is not tied to maintaining a particular image or defending a fixed set of beliefs. It is the peace of being fully present with what is, without the internal burden of maintaining a facade. This radical honesty with ourselves and with the world allows us to connect more deeply with others because they sense our openness and authenticity. It fosters genuine compassion as we see the struggles of others to defend their own fragile constructs. Ultimately, the freedom to exist without the need for defense is the freedom to be truly alive, truly present, and truly at peace with the fluid, ever-changing nature of existence. This freedom is intimately connected to the concept of emptiness, which offers not a void, but an abundance of possibility. The realization that there is nothing solid to defend opens the door to understanding emptiness, not as a lack, but as a fullness of potential. In the next section, we will explore the profound gift of emptiness. The word emptiness can sound daunting, even frightening. We associate it with absence, with nothingness, with meaninglessness. In our habitual way of thinking, to be empty is to be lacking, to be void. But Buddhist wisdom offers a radically different perspective, revealing emptiness not as a deficit, but as a profound and liberating gift. This is the teaching of Shunyata, emptiness. It doesn't mean that things don't exist. It means that things do not exist in the way we conventionally assume them to exist, as solid, independent, permanent entities. Everything arises in dependence on causes and conditions. Nothing has an inherent, self-sufficient existence. When we see this, we understand that all phenomena are empty of such independent, fixed existence. Think about a wave on the ocean. Is the wave a separate entity from the ocean? Does it have an independent existence? No. The wave arises from the ocean, is composed of water, and is propelled by wind and currents. When the wave subsides, it doesn't cease to exist. It simply rejoins the ocean. The wave is empty of inherent, independent existence. It is dependent on the ocean, on the wind, on the conditions that create it. This same principle applies to all phenomena, objects, thoughts, emotions, and even ourselves. We tend to perceive things as solid, separate, and unchanging. We look at a chair and see chairness, an independent entity. We look at a feeling of anger and see anger, a fixed thing within us. We identify with our thoughts as if they are concrete facts, but when we look deeply, we see that these are not solid realities. They are dependently arisen, impermanent, and lacking inherent existence. This realization of emptiness is not about nihilism, it's about liberation. If things are empty of inherent existence, it means they are not fixed. This lack of fixed nature is precisely what allows for change, for transformation, for possibility. If a chair had truly solid, independent existence impervious to any force, it could never be moved, reshaped, or even broken. If our anger had an inherent, unchangeable nature, we would be perpetually consumed by it. The gift of emptiness is that it frees us from the heavy burden of clinging. When we believe things have inherent existence, we cling to them fiercely, trying to hold onto what we perceive as solid and real. This clinging inevitably leads to suffering when circumstances change, as they always do. But when we understand emptiness, we see that what we are clinging to is not as substantial as we believe. The grip loosens. We can appreciate things for what they are, dependently arisen phenomena, without the desperate need to possess or control them. This understanding of emptiness also dissolves the illusion of a separate, inherent self. If I am empty of independent existence, then the boundaries between me and other become porous. This fosters compassion as we recognize our interconnectedness. We see that the suffering of others is not separate from our own, and the well-being of others contributes to our own. Emptiness is not a void. It is the very condition that allows for all phenomena to manifest. It is the spaciousness in which life unfolds. When we are trapped by the illusion of inherent existence, we are trapped by our own fixed views and rigid attachments. When we see emptiness, we are freed into the boundless potential of existence. The fear of emptiness often stems from the mistaken belief that it leads to meaninglessness. But in fact, it points to a deeper, more profound meaning that is not based on fixed assumptions or solid identities. It is the meaning found in the dynamic unfolding of interdependent phenomena. It is the freedom to engage with the world as it is, with wisdom and compassion, without the illusion of solid, unchanging realities that bind us. This liberation from clinging is the very essence of what it means to move from suffering to freedom. This profound understanding of emptiness and the liberation from clinging it offers is directly related to the fundamental causes of suffering we experience. In the next section, we will explore how grasping itself, the act of reaching for what is impermanent, is suffering in motion. We've explored the weight of clinging, the mind's demand for forever, the inevitable falling apart of all things, the fires we touch, the love we can't possess, the impermanent self, the illusion of control, the Buddha's vision, detachment, presence, acceptance, and emptiness. Underlying all these discussions is a fundamental mechanism, grasping, and the Buddha's groundbreaking insight was that this very act of grasping is not just a cause of suffering, but is suffering in motion. Grasping, upadana, is the active verb of clinging. It's the mental and emotional impulse to grab, to hold onto, to pull towards ourselves, or to push away. Desires are grasping, aversions are grasping, craving is grasping. The need for security, for validation, for control, all these are forms of grasping. And what the Buddha saw with undeniable clarity is that this outward or inward movement of trying to acquire or to repel is the very essence of our dissatisfaction. Think about the physical act of grasping a hot object. The moment your fingers close around it, the pain begins. The pain isn't something that happens after you grasp it, it is the experience of grasping it. Similarly, mental and emotional grasping is not separate from the suffering it causes. The very act of wanting something intensely or of recoiling from something with aversion is the suffering itself playing out. Our minds are like magnets, constantly attracting and repelling. We are drawn to pleasant experiences, sensations, and thoughts, and we grasp at them, trying to prolong them, to own them. We are repelled by unpleasant experiences, sensations, and thoughts, and we grasp at their absence, pushing them away with all our might. This constant movement, this restless seeking and rejecting, is the engine of our unease. The suffering isn't the object of our desire or aversion. It's in the act of grasping. The problem isn't the pleasant taste of a delicious meal. It's the desperate craving for that taste to continue indefinitely, or the frustration when it ends. It's not the pain of a physical injury. It's the mental struggle against that pain, the wishing it were not so, the railing against its presence. This is what makes the path so profound. It's not about eliminating desire or aversion from our lives. That would be like trying to stop the heart from beating. It's about changing our relationship with these forces. It's about recognizing the act of grasping itself and choosing to release it. When we practice mindfulness, we are observing this grasping in action. We see the impulse to reach for a comforting thought or to push away a disturbing one. We witness the subtle tightening of our muscles when faced with something unpleasant, or the craving for something pleasant to continue. By simply observing this dynamic without immediate identification or reaction, we begin to see that the grasping is a separate event from the experience itself. It's an added layer of suffering that we impose upon ourselves. Releasing the grasp doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent. It means engaging with life from a place of wholeness rather than from a place of lack or fear. It's about allowing experiences to arise and pass without needing to either capture them or expel them. It's about understanding that true contentment is not found in acquiring or in avoiding, but in a state of being that is free from the restless churning of grasping. This shift is transformative. Instead of being buffeted by the winds of desire and aversion, we begin to stand firm in our own awareness. We learn to allow things to be as they are and to respond with clarity and compassion, free from the violent motion of grasping. This freedom from the constant cycle of grasping is what allows us to truly appreciate the beauty of each moment as it is, without the need to manipulate or control it. The understanding that grasping is suffering in motion leads us to the realization that our most persistent struggles often arise from trying to control the uncontrollable. This futility of control is beautifully illustrated in ancient parables, and in the next section, we will explore the profound lessons contained within the parable of the tiger and the strawberry. Imagine a traveler, weary and lost, wandering through a dense, dark forest. Suddenly, a terrifying roar. He looks up to see a ferocious tiger, its eyes burning with hunger, lunging towards him. Panic seizes him. He turns and flees, but in his haste, he stumbles and falls to the bottom of a deep ravine. But even here, his terror does not subside. At the bottom of the ravine, coiled and waiting, is another hungry tiger. Cornered with one tiger above and another below, the traveler despairs. Then, he notices a small, wild strawberry plant growing precariously from the ravine wall, bearing a single, ripe berry. In his desperation, he reaches out, plucks the strawberry and eats it. It is sweet, surprisingly so, a moment of relief in his horrifying predicament. This parable, common in Zen and other Buddhist traditions, speaks volumes about our own lives. The forest represents the cycle of existence, filled with anxieties and dangers. The tigers represent the inescapable realities of life: craving, aversion, aging, sickness, death, and impermanence. We are caught between these terrifying forces, always trying to escape one or the other, or seeking fleeting comforts to distract us. The traveler's desperate grasp for the strawberry is our own grasping. It is our tendency to seek out immediate pleasures, momentary distractions, or superficial comforts to escape the deeper anxieties of life. We crave the sweet taste of immediate gratification, the fleeting relief from pain, the temporary distraction from the inevitable challenges we face. This grasping, however, does not solve our fundamental problems. It merely distracts us from them, offering a moment of sweetness before the reality of our situation reasserts itself. We might grasp at a new relationship to escape loneliness, only to find the same loneliness lurking beneath the surface once the initial excitement fades. We might grasp at material possessions to feel secure, only to find that the fear of loss or the desire for more quickly return. We might grasp at constant entertainment, at busyness, at scrolling through endless feeds to avoid the quiet contemplation of our own existence. The sweetness of the strawberry is real, just as pleasure is real. But its sweetness is temporary, and our reliance on these temporary satisfactions to navigate our fundamental predicaments is what keeps us trapped. We become so focused on the immediate taste, the momentary relief, that we fail to address the underlying ravine, the roaring tigers. The true wisdom of the parable lies not in the act of eating the strawberry, but in understanding the context of that act. The traveler is in a life-or-death situation. The strawberry offers a momentary reprieve, a fleeting sweetness amidst overwhelming terror. This highlights how our own use of pleasure and distraction can be a form of avoidance, a way of not truly facing our deepest fears and the fundamental truths of existence. What if, instead of reaching for the strawberry, the traveler had paused? What if he had used that moment of apparent calm, the brief sweetness, to observe his situation with a clear, non-grasping mind? What if he had seen the tigers not as insurmountable enemies to be fled from, but as manifestations of the very forces he needed to understand? The parable invites us to question our own clinging to momentary pleasures. Are we using them as genuine nourishment, or as a way to avoid confronting the deeper challenges of our lives? Are we seeking sweetness to escape a terrifying reality, or are we learning to appreciate the sweetness of the present moment precisely because we understand its impermanence without needing it to solve our fundamental predicaments? This recognition of the temporary nature of even our greatest pleasures helps us understand that lasting peace doesn't come from acquiring more sweetness, but from a different way of being. This deeper understanding reveals that holding onto things too tightly is unnecessary, and that we don't need them to last forever to find peace. This realization leads us to the understanding that the pursuit of permanence is not only futile, but also unnecessary for true contentment. In the next section, we will explore why you don't need it to last to find peace. The mantra of modern life often seems to be about acquisition and preservation. We strive to obtain things, experiences, relationships, and then we try, with all our might, to make them last. We believe that happiness, security, and fulfillment lie in the endurance of these desirable states. If only this could last forever, we sigh, mistaking permanence for peace. But the wisdom traditions, particularly Buddhism, offer a counterintuitive truth. You don't need it to last to find peace. In fact, the very insistence that something must last is often the source of our deepest suffering. This clinging to permanence creates anxiety, fear of loss, and dissatisfaction when the inevitable changes occur. Consider the fleeting beauty of a sunset. We marvel at its vibrant colors, its breathtaking spectacle. If we tried to command the sunset to stay, to prolong its display indefinitely, we would only be met with frustration. The beauty of the sunset is not diminished by its brevity. In many ways, its ephemeral nature is precisely what makes it so precious and profound. We appreciate it because we know it will pass. This same principle applies to all aspects of life. The laughter shared with a friend, the joy of a delicious meal, the passion of a creative endeavor, the warmth of a loving embrace. The value and beauty of these experiences are not negated by their impermanence. When we are fully present and appreciate them as they are, in their moment, we find a richness that is independent of their duration. The suffering arises when we attach specific conditions to our happiness. I will be happy when this relationship lasts, or I will be content if this success endures. This is like building your house on shifting sands. When the sands inevitably shift, your house and your happiness crumbles with them. The Buddha taught that the path to peace is not through securing permanent conditions, but through cultivating unshakable inner contentment that is independent of external circumstances. This inner peace is not a state of apathy, but a vibrant appreciation for life as it unfolds, moment by moment. It is the understanding that true joy is not in possession, but in appreciation, not in duration, but in presence. When we release the need for things to last, we open ourselves to a radical form of freedom. We can love more fully because we are not burdened by the fear of loss. We can engage in our work with passion because our fulfillment is not tied to its eternal recognition. We can savor moments of joy because we understand their preciousness precisely because they are fleeting. This doesn't mean we don't strive for lasting positive outcomes. It means our inner peace is not contingent on those outcomes remaining static. It means our happiness is not dependent on external achievements or relationships enduring forever. Our peace is found in our ability to adapt, to appreciate, and to let go with grace. The practice of mindfulness is essential here. By bringing our attention to the present moment, we train ourselves to experience life as it is, rather than as we wish it to be. We learn to appreciate the fleeting nature of each experience, and in doing so, we discover that true contentment does not require permanence. It requires a wise and open heart, ready to embrace the gift of each passing moment, knowing that its transient nature is not a deficiency, but a fundamental aspect of its beauty and its truth. This understanding allows us to find peace even as the world around us and within us changes, including the undeniable physical changes we experience as we age. This acceptance of change, even the profound changes of aging, is a testament to the inner peace we can cultivate. In the next section, we will explore how an aging body does not necessitate a restless mind and how wisdom can flourish with time. Our culture often equates youth with vitality and age with decline. We fear the physical changes that come with time, the wrinkles, the stiffness, the fading strength, and we often project this fear onto our mental and emotional states. We worry that as our bodies age, so too will our minds become frail, our spirits dim, and our capacity for peace diminished. But this is a narrative, not an inherent truth. The wisdom traditions offer a counter-perspective. An aging body does not have to mean a restless or diminished mind. In fact, the very process of aging, when met with awareness and acceptance, can be a fertile ground for cultivating a profound stillness and even greater wisdom. The Buddha himself, as he aged, continued to teach and to embody a deep sense of peace. His physical form changed, but his clarity of mind, his compassion, and his understanding remained unwavering. This demonstrates that the strength and vitality of our inner life are not solely dependent on the condition of our physical body. The fear of aging is often rooted in our clinging to a youthful self, our resistance to the natural cycle of life. We want to preserve a state of being that is inherently impermanent. But when we begin to loosen this grip, when we accept the natural changes that time brings, something remarkable can happen. We can begin to appreciate the body for what it is and what it has enabled us to experience, rather than lamenting its perceived shortcomings. Mindfulness practice is particularly potent as we age. By paying attention to the breath, to bodily sensations with kindness, and to the present moment, we can transcend the anxieties about physical decline. We can learn to discern between the physical sensations of aging and the mental stories we tell ourselves about them. The aches and pains become observations rather than judgments. The slowing down becomes an invitation for deeper reflection rather than a source of frustration. The years can bring a wealth of experience, a deeper understanding of life, and a refined capacity for compassion. These are not diminished by age. They can, in fact, be amplified. With time, we have the opportunity to witness the cycles of life repeatedly, to learn from our mistakes, and to develop a more nuanced perspective on the human condition. This accumulated wisdom, when coupled with a still mind, can lead to a profound sense of peace and contentment that is often elusive in youth. The key is to decouple our sense of self-worth and well-being from our physical appearance or capabilities. Instead of seeing aging as a loss, we can begin to see it as a deepening. We can focus on cultivating inner qualities that are not subject to the same decay as the physical body. These include patience, kindness, wisdom, and a profound acceptance of reality. This does not mean we disregard our physical health. On the contrary, caring for our bodies becomes an act of appreciation for the vehicle that carries us through life. But it is an act of care rooted in acceptance, not in a desperate attempt to ward off the inevitable. The wisdom gained through years of experience can also help us see through the superficial struggles that may have consumed us in our youth. The anxieties about status, appearance, and external validation often lose their power as we mature. We begin to value inner qualities more highly and to recognize that true peace comes from within, not from external achievements or declarations of eternal youth. An aging body can, indeed, house a remarkably still and wise mind. It requires a conscious shift in perspective, a willingness to embrace the natural flow of life, and a commitment to cultivating inner resources that transcend physical limitations. It's about recognizing that the journey of life, including its final stages, can be met with grace, wisdom, and a deep, abiding peace. This peace is not about denying the changes of aging, but about embracing them as a natural part of a rich and unfolding existence, leading to a deeper understanding of our true experience. This journey of understanding leads us to a fundamental realization about our relationship with existence itself. In the next section, we will explore the idea that you were never truly owning, but only experiencing. We live in a world that constantly emphasizes ownership. We own houses, cars, jobs, relationships, even ideas and emotions. We believe that acquiring and possessing brings security, happiness, and status. We build our identities around what we own. But this concept of ownership, when examined through the lens of Buddhist wisdom, is another deeply ingrained illusion that contributes significantly to our suffering. The truth is, you are never truly owning anything. You have been and always will be an experiencer. This might sound like a subtle distinction, but it's a profound shift in perspective that can dissolve mountains of attachment and fear. Consider your possessions. The house you might own is made of materials that were once alive or extracted from the earth. It is subject to the forces of nature, to decay, to legal ownership by governments and banks. The car you drive is a complex assembly of parts, constantly requiring maintenance, subject to depreciation and eventual obsolescence. Even things that seem more personal, like your memories or your skills, are not truly owned in a static sense. They are dynamic processes, constantly being reshaped by new experiences and fading with disuse. This is where the concept of emptiness, shunyata, comes into play. Because things lack inherent, independent existence, they cannot truly be owned in the way we imagine. They are dependently arisen phenomena, temporary manifestations of causes and conditions. Your ownership is more akin to having temporary stewardship, or perhaps a legal construct, rather than a fundamental truth of possession. When we truly internalize the idea that we are experiencers rather than owners, our relationship with life transforms. The fear of loss begins to recede. If you are experiencing a beautiful home, a loving relationship, or a successful career, you can appreciate these experiences fully without the anxiety of losing them, because you understand they are not yours to permanently possess. You are simply having the experience of them in this moment. This perspective shifts our focus from acquisition to appreciation. Instead of constantly striving to get more or keep what we have, we learn to savor the richness of our current experiences. We can engage with life with greater freedom and less attachment. The joy of a beautiful meal is in the tasting, not in the conviction that you now own the perfect recipe or the chef's skill. The love in a relationship is in the sharing and connection, not in the belief that you have claimed another person. This realization also extends to our own being. We spoke earlier about the impermanence of the self. We don't own our bodies, our minds, or our consciousness. We are experiencing them. We are the stream of sensations, thoughts, and emotions, not the owner of that stream. This understanding frees us from tyrannical self-criticism and the desperate need to maintain a fixed identity. When we operate from the understanding that we are experiencers, we become more resilient. When challenges arise, instead of seeing them as assaults on our possessions or our identity, we see them as part of the tapestry of experiences we are going through. This doesn't mean suffering disappears, but the suffering born from attachment to ownership is greatly diminished. The peace that arises from recognizing that you are an experiencer, not an owner, is deep and abiding. It's a peace that comes from letting go of the illusion of control and embrace of the reality of flow. It is the ultimate freedom from the burden of possession, allowing you to engage with life's offerings with gratitude and wonder, simply experiencing the unfolding of existence without the need to claim ownership. This profound shift in perspective allows us to truly appreciate what remains when everything passes. When we understand that we are merely experiencing, not owning, we can begin to truly grasp the nature of what remains when the ephemeral passes. In the next section, we will explore the profound peace that remains when everything passes. The natural course of life is one of constant flux. Relationships form and dissolve, opportunities arise and vanish, our bodies age, and even the very landscape around us transforms. We often perceive these constant shifts as a threat to our well-being, believing that our peace is contingent upon things remaining the same, upon holding onto what is desirable and fending off what is not. But the ancient wisdom points to an extraordinary truth. True peace is not found in clinging to permanence, but in the profound stillness that arises when we fully accept the passing of everything. This is the peace that remains when the storm has blown over, when the initial grief has subsided, when the excitement has faded. It is not a peace born of absence or emptiness, but a peace that is inherent in the very nature of awareness itself. It is the deep, unchanging core that lies beneath the surface of all our changing experiences. Think of the ocean. Though the surface may be churned by waves, storms, and currents, the depths of the ocean remain vast, still, and boundless. Similarly, beneath the surface of our ever-changing thoughts, emotions, and experiences, there lies a fundamental awareness, a ground of being that is untouched by the comings and goings of phenomena. This is the peace that remains. The understanding that we are experiencers, not owners, is crucial here. When we are not desperately trying to hold onto what is passing, we create space for this deeper peace to reveal itself. We are not clinging to a fleeting moment of joy, nor are we resolutely resisting a painful experience. Instead, we are allowing them to arise and pass like clouds in the sky. This peace is not the absence of feeling, but the freedom from being controlled by those feelings. It is the ability to experience the full spectrum of human emotion, joy, sorrow, anger, love, without being swept away by them to the point of losing our equilibrium. It is the quiet strength that comes from knowing that no matter what happens on the surface, the depths remain calm. The practice of mindfulness is the primary tool that allows us to access this peace. By training ourselves to be present with whatever arises, without judgment or resistance, we gradually learn to recognize the unchanging nature of our own awareness. We see that the thoughts and emotions flash and fade, but the capacity to witness them remains constant. This peace is not something we need to strive for or acquire. It is already here, present beneath the layers of our conditioning and our attachments. It is like a clear sky that is always present, even when obscured by clouds. Our practice is simply to clear away the clouds of our resistance and our clinging, allowing the inherent peace of our fundamental awareness to shine through. When we stop fighting against the impermanent nature of things, when we stop trying to hold onto what is passing, we discover that the passing itself is not a threat, but a natural unfolding. And in this acceptance, there is a profound sense of ease, a letting go that allows the deep peace of just being to emerge. This peace is not dependent on our circumstances, our possessions, or our relationships. It is the intrinsic nature of a mind that has seen through the illusion of permanence and embraced the reality of change. This allows us to move forward, understanding that life's journey is not about retracing steps, but about embracing the present unfolding. Understanding that permanence is an illusion and that the past cannot be revisited leads to a powerful realization about our lived experience. In the next section, we will explore the unchangeable truth that you do not get to rewind the past. We are creatures of narrative, constantly weaving stories about our lives. We replay past events, rehash conversations, and fantasize about alternative timelines. The mind, in its C's Gujarati, Uga, our activity, can conjure scenarios where we should have said something different, should have acted another way, or should have made a different choice. This is the natural tendency to wish for a rewind button to correct perceived mistakes and optimize for a future based on a revised past. But the fundamental law of existence is straightforward. The past is immutable. You do not get to rewind it. The moments have arisen, played out, and passed. They exist now only as memories, interpretations, and traces within the ever-flowing stream of consciousness. No amount of regret, wishful thinking, or mental rehashing can alter what has already occurred. This truth can be both liberating and challenging. It's challenging because our suffering often stems from our inability to accept this immutable fact. We get stuck in loops of if only, becoming prisoners of our own hypothetical timelines. We suffer because we want to change what is unchangeable, but it is also deeply liberating. When we truly embrace the fact that the past cannot be rewritten, we are freed from the burden of constantly trying to do so. We can stop expending precious energy on the impossible task of altering history. Instead, we can focus on the only time that is truly within our sphere of influence, the present moment. Consider a river flowing to the sea. You cannot go upstream and command the water that has already passed to return. It is on its inevitable journey. Our lives are much the same. The past is that water that has already flowed downstream. We can look back at it, learn from it, understand its currents and how they shape the landscape, but we cannot make it flow back. The practice of mindfulness is our most powerful tool in navigating this. By anchoring ourselves in the present, we are not denying the past, but rather disengaging from the fruitless exercise of trying to manipulate it. We acknowledge the past, learn its lessons, and then gently release our grip on it. This release is not about forgetting or condoning, but about accepting the reality of what has been and directing our energy towards what can be. This is where the wisdom of acceptance truly shines. Accepting that the past cannot be rewound doesn't mean we don't learn from it. It means we learn from it without being bound by it. We extract the wisdom, acknowledge the consequences, and then move forward with newfound understanding. The regrets and anxieties that arise from wishing to rewind are simply more grasping, more resistance to the flow of reality. When we stop trying to rewind, we discover that the present moment becomes incredibly potent. It is the only place where we have agency, where we can make choices, where we can shape our experience. The peace we seek is not in a hypothetical, corrected past, but in the full, unadulterated experience of the present. The present is where life is truly lived. The full embrace of the present moment, with its constant unfolding, leads us to a deeper place of stillness amidst the flux. In the next section, we will explore the still point that exists underneath all change. Life is a river, constantly flowing, constantly changing. We are buffeted by the currents of our thoughts, emotions, and external circumstances. It feels as though we are always in motion, always shifting, always reacting to the immediate pressures of existence. But beneath this restless surface, beneath all the flux and transformation, lies something unchanging. A still point, a core of awareness that is not affected by the comings and goings of phenomena. This is not a concept of a static, unchanging ego or self. As we've discussed, the self as a fixed entity is an illusion. The still point is not a thing, but rather the very capacity to be aware. It is the space in which all experiences arise and pass away. It is the fundamental awareness itself, untouched by the content of what it observes. Think of a movie screen. The images that play on the screen are constantly changing, scenes shift, characters move, light and shadow play out. But the screen itself remains constant. It is the backdrop against which all the action unfolds. Our awareness is like that screen. The thoughts, feelings, and sensations are like the images. They flicker, they transform, they appear and disappear, but the screen of our awareness remains. The practice of mindfulness is essentially the process of discovering this still point. When we sit in meditation, or when we bring conscious attention to our breath, our body, or our surroundings, we are gently training ourselves to notice the unchanging backdrop of awareness. We observe our thoughts arising, but we don't identify with them as us. We feel emotions, but we recognize them as transient states within the larger field of our awareness. This still point is not something we need to create or achieve. It is already present. Our practice is about peeling back the layers of identification and distraction that obscure it. It's like clearing away fog to reveal the mountain that has always been there. When we can connect with this still point, even for brief moments, a profound sense of peace and stability can arise. The external storms may rage, the internal winds may blow, but we can find refuge in this inner quietude. It becomes our anchor, our unshakable center, from which we can navigate the complexities of life with greater wisdom and equanimity. This stillness is not a denial of life's dynamism. It is, in fact, the foundation upon which genuine engagement with life can occur. When we are not desperately clinging to fleeting experiences or resisting unpleasant ones, we are free to respond to life, unfolding with clarity and purpose. The still point does not stop the river. It allows us to stand on the bank and observe its flow with a serene heart. The discovery of this inner stillness can profoundly alter our relationship with life's ultimate transition, death. In the next section, we will explore how death ends the future, but not reality itself, and how this understanding can free us. The word death often evokes a sense of ultimate finality, of cessation, of an absolute end. We fear it because it represents the unknown, the loss of all that we know and cherish, and the end of our perceived future. We associate it with oblivion, with nothingness. But Buddhist teachings offer a reframing of death, not as an end to existence, but as an end to the future and a transformation within the larger reality. When we speak of the future, we are referring to our personal, linear continuation, the me that continues to live, to experience, to plan, to exist in time. Death, in this sense, is indeed the end of that future. The personal narrative, the continuity of ego ceases. The individual stream of consciousness, as we know it, dissolves its distinct form. However, this dissolution does not mean the end of reality itself. Reality, in its broadest sense, is the interconnected web of existence, the arising and passing of phenomena, the constant interplay of cause and effect. Life, in this sense, does not cease, it transforms. The energy that animated a living being does not simply vanish, it rearranges, it rejoins the cosmic flow, it becomes part of something new. Think again of the ocean. The wave arises, crests, and eventually subsides, rejoining the vastness of the ocean. The wave's future as a distinct wave ends, but it does not cease to be water. Similarly, a life ends, but the energy, the essence, the elements that constituted that life continue to exist in a transformed state. The universe is not diminished by death. It is simply playing out another of its innumerable transformations. This understanding shifts our perspective from fear to acceptance, and from despair to a profound sense of continuity, albeit a continuity beyond our limited, ego-bound imagination. The teachings on impermanence and emptiness are crucial here, because we are fundamentally impermanent and empty of inherent, fixed existence. The idea of a final, absolute end to us becomes less terrifying. We were never a solid entity to begin with, but a dynamic process. Death is simply the conclusion of one phase of that process. This perspective doesn't negate the pain and sorrow associated with loss. The grief of those left behind is a testament to the profound connections that exist, but it helps to reframe our own fear of death. If we understand that we are part of a much larger, ever-transforming reality, then the end of our individual future is not an annihilation, but a return to the source, a rejoining of the cosmic dance. Death within this framework becomes not an enemy to be fought, but a natural and inevitable transition. It is the culmination of the life process, just as birth is its beginning. By accepting death as a natural part of reality, we can live our lives more fully, appreciating each moment without the anxious preoccupation with an unending personal future. We can engage with life with greater courage, knowing that our existence is part of a grander, ongoing transformation. The fear of death often comes from the perceived loss of control and the unknown. However, by understanding that death is a transformation within reality, we can find a different kind of freedom, a freedom to live fully now and to approach the inevitable end with a sense of peace rather than dread. This can lead to a more beautiful experience of life, even in its waning stages. This liberation from the fear of endings allows us to embrace life's inevitable changes with grace. In the next section, we will explore what it means to experience this wisdom, to lose beautifully. Life is a continuous process of gain and loss. We gain experiences, relationships, possessions, and then, inevitably, we lose them. We gain youth and then lose it to age. We gain health and then may lose it to illness. The constant interplay of gain and loss is woven into the very fabric of existence. But our struggle with loss, our fear of it, often turns what could be a natural transition into a profound source of suffering. Wisdom, in its deepest sense, is the ability to navigate this terrain, to lose beautifully. Losing beautifully is not about being unaffected by loss. It is about acknowledging the pain, the grief, the sadness that comes with letting go, but doing so with a profound understanding and a graceful acceptance of impermanence. It is about recognizing that the beauty of an experience or a relationship is not negated by its eventual passing. In fact, its transient nature often imbues it with a special preciousness in the moment. Think of autumn leaves. They blaze with color, a glorious spectacle, and then they fall. To mourn each leaf's descent as a tragedy would be to miss the magnificent display they offered. Wisdom understands that the falling is part of the cycle, a natural transition that allows for new growth. Losing beautifully means appreciating the brilliance of the leaf's color, understanding its impermanence, and accepting its fall with a sense of natural completion. This applies to all forms of loss. When we practice detachment, we are better able to love without possession, to engage without clinging. This allows us to experience relationships and moments more fully in their present, without the anxious need for them to endure indefinitely. When loss inevitably occurs, the pain is still present, but the agony of believing that something essential has been stolen, that the world has ended, is lessened. Wisdom teaches us that our identity is not tied to what we hold on to. It is not defined by what we possess or by the permanence of our circumstances. When we can release the need to defend and control, we become more resilient. We can grieve, we can feel the sting of absence, but we do not allow it to define us or to shatter our inner peace. We understand that this is part of the human journey. Losing beautifully also involves a willingness to learn from the experience. Each loss offers an opportunity for deeper understanding of ourselves, of life, and of what truly matters. It strips away the superficial and reveals the core of our being. It can lead to increased compassion, both for ourselves and for others who are experiencing loss. It is about recognizing that even in moments of profound absence, something remains. The love shared, the lessons learned, the memories cherished, these are not lost. They are transformed, integrated into the tapestry of our being. The wisdom gained from loss is not a diminishment, but an enrichment. It is the deep understanding that arises from facing the inevitable truths of life with an open heart. This ability to lose beautifully is the hallmark of a life lived with deep wisdom and acceptance. It is the embodiment of the understanding that impermanence is not an enemy, but a fundamental aspect of reality that, when embraced, can lead to a profound sense of peace and liberation. This graceful surrender to life's transitions is an invitation. This graceful surrender is not a passive resignation, but an active embracing of life's unfolding. In the next section, we will explore this invitation to stop holding on, to finally release our grasp. The teachings we've explored, impermanence, no self, suffering arising from grasping, the illusion of control, the nature of emptiness, all converge on a single, potent invitation to stop holding on. It is a call to release the habitual grip we have on our thoughts, our desires, our identities, our past, and our expectations for the future. This invitation is not a gentle suggestion. It is the very path to liberation from suffering. Holding on is the subtle, or not so subtle, tension we carry within us. It is the internal clenching that happens when we encounter something we like and desperately want to keep, or when we encounter something we dislike and desperately want to push away. It is the mental contraction that occurs when we believe we are threatened, or when we cling to a fixed narrative about ourselves or the world. This holding on creates stress, anxiety, and a fundamental disconnect from the present moment. Imagine trying to cup water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the more water you lose through your fingers. This is exactly what happens when we hold on too tightly to life's experiences or to our rigidly defined selves. The more we try to possess or control, the more we lose the fluid, living quality of those experiences. The invitation to stop holding on is an invitation to embrace an open hand. It is a gesture of trust, a willingness to let life flow through us rather than trying to capture and bottle it. This does not mean becoming passive or apathetic. It means engaging with life from a place of spaciousness rather than from a place of desperate need. Consider the breath. It enters, it nourishes, and then it leaves. We do not hold onto the inhaled breath, desperately preventing it from leaving. If we did, we would suffocate. We naturally exhale, releasing what is no longer needed to make space for the new. So too can we learn to release our mental and emotional inhales, our attachments, our judgments, our regrets, to make space for the fresh air of the present moment. This practice of stopping the holding on is cultivated through mindfulness. We notice when we are clenching our fists mentally or emotionally. We observe the familiar tightening in our chest when we encounter something displeasing, or the subtle grasping when something pleasurable arises. And in that noticing, we can make a choice. The choice to soften, to open, to release. This release is not a one-time event. It is a continuous practice. It is the gentle, ongoing process of letting go. It is acknowledging that all things, including our current feelings and circumstances, are impermanent, and that holding on is ultimately a futile struggle against the natural order of things. By stopping the holding on, we don't lose anything that truly matters. We lose the burdens of attachment, the anxieties of control, and the pain of resistance. What we gain is a profound sense of freedom, a greater capacity for joy, and a deeper connection to ourselves and to the world around us. It is the quietening of the restless mind, an opening to the vastness of existence, and a willingness to meet whatever comes with an open heart. This willingness to open ourselves is the heart of embracing change. This embrace of change is not a surrender to fate, but a profound affirmation of life. In the next section, we will explore what remains when you say yes to change. The human tendency is to resist change. We crave stability, predictability, and permanence. When faced with the inevitable shifts and transitions of life, we often recoil, holding tightly to the familiar, fearing the unknown. This resistance is a primary source of our suffering. But what happens when we flip that script? What remains when you say yes to change, not as an enemy, but as a fundamental aspect of life? Saying yes to change is not about passively accepting every circumstance. It is an active, courageous embrace of the dynamic nature of existence. It is a profound recognition that life is not a fixed destination, but a continuous, unfolding journey. When we stop fighting against the current and instead learn to flow with it, we discover a remarkable capacity for resilience, peace, and even joy. When you say yes to change, you release the exhausting energy spent on resistance. Imagine battling a strong wind. The more you push against it, the more weary you become. But if you learn to move with its force, to adjust your sails, you can navigate the storm with far less effort and much greater effectiveness. Similarly, saying yes to change allows us to expend our energy constructively, rather than futilely attempting to control the uncontrollable. This embrace of impermanence opens the door to profound appreciation. When we are no longer desperately trying to hold on to things, we can truly savor them in their moment. The beauty of a fleeting moment, the joy of a transient connection, the vibrant energy of youth, these are not diminished by their impermanence. In fact, their very transience makes them exquisitely precious. Acknowledging that things must pass allows us to cherish them all the more deeply. Furthermore, saying yes to change fosters adaptability. Life will invariably present us with unexpected twists and turns. Without the rigidity of resistance, we become more flexible, more resourceful. We are better equipped to navigate challenges, to learn from setbacks, and to find new avenues for growth and fulfillment. This adaptability is not a sign of weakness, but of profound strength. When you say yes to change, you also create space for the new. Holding onto the past, to old patterns, to fixed ideas, prevents anything fresh from entering your life. By releasing your grip, you open yourself to unforeseen opportunities, new perspectives, and deeper connections. It is in this spaciousness that true creativity and transformation can occur. The peace that remains when you say yes to change is a peace that is not dependent on external circumstances remaining static. It is an inner peace, a deep contentment that arises from alignment with the natural flow of life. It is the understanding that even in the midst of upheaval, there is a stable ground of awareness, a quiet strength that can always be accessed. This profound shift from resistance to surrender is a journey of courage and trust. It is the ultimate act of letting go, of trusting that life, in its ever-changing nature, has something beautiful to offer, provided we are willing to meet it with an open heart. Saying yes to change is not about resignation. It's about embracing the vibrant, dynamic dance of existence itself. After understanding the profound embrace of change, we can finally arrive at a simple yet powerful truth about where true peace resides. Understanding that embracing the present, in all its changing forms, is the only true constant, reveals that there is, in fact, no safe place to retreat to accept the absolute present. In the next section, we will explore the powerful truth that there is no safe place except now. We spend so much of our lives searching for a safe place. We build complex systems, create comforting routines, and cling to familiar relationships, all in an effort to find a sanctuary, a place where we can finally be free from the uncertainties and anxieties of life. We dream of future security, of a time when things will be settled, when the storms will pass, and we can finally relax. But the profound wisdom of the ages points to a simple, yet often overlooked truth. There is no safe place to retreat to except now. The past is gone. It can be a source of lessons, of memories, of echoes, but it can never be a refuge. Trying to find safety in the past is like trying to recapture a dream after waking. The essence is gone, only the lingering impression remains. Our minds may try to recreate it, to revisit it, but it is a phantom realm offering no true security. The future, too, is not a safe place. It is a realm of projection, of hopes and fears, of endless possibilities that are largely beyond our control. Depending on the future for safety is like building your house on clouds. It appears solid for a moment, but it is ultimately unsustainable and precarious. The anxiety we feel about what might happen demonstrates that the future is not a place of safety, but a breeding ground for apprehension. This leaves us with only one reliable ground for safety, for peace, for authentic living: the present moment. The now is the only reality we ever truly inhabit. It is the point where all experience occurs. And within the present moment, when approached with awareness and acceptance, lies a profound and unshakable stillness. When we are truly present, we are not trying to escape pain or cling to pleasure. We are simply here with whatever is arising. The breath is here. The sensations in the body are here. The sounds around us are here. This here-ness is not dependent on external circumstances being perfect or ideal. It is a state of being that is always available, regardless of what is happening. The practice of mindfulness is the key to unlocking this safety. By bringing our attention to the present moment, we are anchoring ourselves in reality. We are stepping out of the illusory realms of past and future and grounding ourselves in what is actually happening. In this grounding, we discover a remarkable resilience. The storms may still rage, but we find that we are not swept away by them. We can observe them from a place of inner stability. This safety is not a fortress wall designed to keep the world out. It is an inner spaciousness that allows the world to be as it is, while we remain centered and calm. It is the ability to meet chaos with stillness, to face uncertainty with equanimity, and to find peace not in the absence of challenges, but in our capacity to meet them with our full, present awareness. The present moment is not a temporary stopgap on the way to a future safe haven. It is the only true haven. It is the place where life is lived, where love is felt, and where peace is found. There is no other place to find security, for it is in the unchanging awareness of the now that our truest refuge resides, a peace that is always available when we stop searching elsewhere.